Dr. Hovind, I love your doctoral thesis. I've torn it to pieces with house and gaffle. I can't remember when I last pissed myself laughing. It's a good thing the thesis mopped the piss off the floor.
Welcome to part 47 of this read-through and peer review of Kent Hovind's doctoral dissertation, which was published on wikileaks.org on December the 9th, 2009. If you have not yet seen the previous parts in this series, then I recommend that you go back and see those first, as in this episode I will start off exactly where I left off in the last. In the last episode, we essentially finished off with Kent rehashing the last few paragraphs of chapter 1. In this episode, thankfully, Kent goes off in a tangent after he finds some new material to quote and take wildly out of context. Kent continues. Yes, the controversy and debate of evolution and creation has a tremendous influence on our society. Yes, Kent, because people with much better things to do end up having to debunk and re-educate you fucktards who believe in this Bronze Age rubbish. But carry on. Joseph Stalin, yes, also invoked when you're losing the argument, and, well, you've already covered the Nazis. Carry on. Joseph Stalin was another evolutionist. Don't forget, Kent, he was also a communist, and he had a scary moustache. I quote here from the Impact article published by the Institute for Creation Research, so you know that it's going to be accurate, in El Cajon, California, October 1987. Impact article number 172, entitled Stalin's Brutal Faith. What, you mean like Stalin the atheist had a faith? One of the men that had a profound impact on Joseph Stalin when he was just a young person was the man Charles Darwin in his book The Origin of Species. At a very early age, while still a pupil in the ecclesiastical school, Comrade Stalin developed a critical mind and a revolutionary sentiment. He began to read Darwin and became an atheist. Bugger that, it's unpronounceable. A friend of Stalin's relates, I began to speak of God. Joseph heard me out, and after a moment of silence he said, You know, they are fooling us. There is no God. I was astonished at these words. I had never heard anything like it before. I guess he'd never met an atheist. Or a rational argument, for that matter. How can you say such things so, I exclaimed. I'll lend you a book to read. It will show you that the world and all living things are quite different from what you imagined, and you will see that all of this talk about God is sheer nonsense, Joseph said. What book is that? I inquired. Darwin. You must read it, Joseph impressed on me. So what you're saying, Kent, is that this Stalin guy, he was a bright lad. He believed in science and not ooky-pooky magic shit. You know, if I wasn't already familiar with Joseph Stalin from your ramblings earlier on, I'd say that that guy was probably destined to go far. You know, he'll probably end up at some point in his life ruling the biggest country on earth. But do go on. A few pages later, another individual was reflecting on Stalin's youthful pursuits, and he added the following. In order to disabuse the minds of our seminary students of the myth that the world was created in 6 days, we had to acquaint ourselves with the geological origin of the age of the earth, and to be able to prove them in argument, he had to familiarize ourselves with Darwin's writings. In other words, Kent, what he was saying is that there's more than one book in this world, and he wasn't talking about the phone book. You see, to me, what Stalin was saying here was that, don't just read one side of the argument. Read the other side, too. You might actually find you agree with it. You might actually find that the evidence is more compelling. You see, if you've been spoon-fed the mumbo-jumbo in the Christian Bible, and it still makes absolutely no sense, and it still sounds like bullshit, you might find that if you read a different book, well, it'll either put what you have been learning already into context and you will understand it, or you'll just realise that you've been spoon-fed a huge pile of bullshit. Either way, if what you've been taught is so logical and you're so strong in your faith, then what does it matter if they read Darwin? Surely the Christian Bible will stand up on its own merits. But carry on, Kent. Joseph Stalin, in the name of evolution and to help purify the Russian race, was responsible for killing 60 million of his own people during his reign of terror. We are still digging up mass graves of people that were slaughtered by Stalin. Yes, Kent, and I think you'll find that Stalin's murderous spree was less to do with evolution and more to do with suppressing dissent. You see, if you're a megalomaniac dictator intent on controlling the people, then you often find that you have to kill a few of them. Specifically the ones that do dissent. You then generally find that the ones that don't, well, they're all shitting themselves that they're going to be next, so they will shut up and toe the line. That's generally how it works, and that's generally what happened. But continue. Communism also has its roots in evolution. Let me quote some more here from the Impact article 172. Stalin's brutal faith. As early as December the 12th, 1859, only 2 months after The Origin of Species was published, Friedrich Engels wrote to Karl Marx, "Darwin, whom I am just now reading, is splendid." About a year later, December the 19th, 1860, Karl Marx, the father of communism, responded, "During my time of trial these last few weeks, I have read all sorts of things, among others Darwin's book of natural selection. Although it is developed in the crude English style, this is the book which contains the basis of natural history for our view." Of course, to the viewer and reader, the point to note in that statement was the "I have read all sorts of things, among others," which means that he's read other books, and not just Darwin's natural selection book. But do go on. To one Ferdinand Lassalle, he wrote on January the 16th, 1861, "Darwin's book is very important and serves me as the basis in natural science for the class struggle in history." Yes, Kent, because it's not as though anybody has ever read many other books and, inferred a meaning from it, and therefore inferred a justification for it. Of course, that meaning and justification has absolutely nothing to do with what the original author intended. No, Kent, I can't think of any other book at all. Can you? But carry on. Circle that Marx wanted to dedicate Das Kapital to Darwin. Very good, Kent. Now, could you structure that sentence in such a way that it actually has a meaning in English, please? Oh, never mind. Harvard's Stephen Jay Gould, an intense and modern spokesman for evolution, corroborates that he saw Darwin's copy of Marx's first copy inscribed by Marx, describing himself as a sincere admirer of the English naturalist Darwin. So basically what you're saying, Kent, is that the guy that came up with communism liked Darwin's book, and therefore Darwin must also endorse communism.